Hello students, today we'll be learning about British policies and their impact chapter 5. Before we start, I would like to tell you that I will not be reading the text, but there will be many points that I'll be pointing out from the text which will be important for your exams, so I request you to listen carefully. So here we start. The British came to India while the Mughal Empire was in his prime time. Resources were available and cheap, and this attracted the British to set up headquarters or offices to run their company. To make this happen, they had to get the full support of the empire. Our empire, being open about their cause, allowed the British to have trade with India. This was just a start for the British to imprint their presence, which later on became a stink that India could not let off of it. In order to keep their trades alive, the British or the company started to make rules in order to gain the maximum profit by making policies that were rather harmful for the Indians. Knowing that agriculture was the main source, they came up with a plan where taxes were collected from the land of the farmers from which they were earning. Some of the systems they introduced were rather harsh. The first system was known as the Mihari System. Introduced in 1820, the British made a rule where the farmers who is working in any particular field are the owners themselves, and the land revenue was collected. These revenues were revised after 20 to 30 years. The revenue were according to the fertility of the soil. The second system was known as Mihari System. Introduced in 1822, it is a land settlement but on a temporary basis. It was introduced in parts of Gangetic Valley, northwest parts of India, parts of Bengal and Bombay and Punjab. This system introduces mahal or group of villagers, and revenue or taxes were collected according to the capacity of the products, but it was not effective since the people who work there are poor and they never own the land, and the landowner or zamindars were rather exploiting the poor people who were working in their fields. Number 3, we have permanent settlement. Introduced by Lord Cornwallis in 1793, it was implemented or the system was made use only in Orissa, Bengal, Bihar and coastal areas of Andhra Pradesh. Under this rule, the zamindar are the owners of the land and were given power to throw away the rights of those people or farmers who were working in their land, which includes not paying for their hard work or daily wages. It also introduced a system where if those zamindars cannot pay their revenue or taxes, they will lose the land and the government will take it back. This system helped the company to never run out of money without doing much hard work. This system also created a class of people or landlords who became loyal to the British people and to the company. Disadvantages of having such policies or systems. The way revenue was collected was not fair, and the farmers or daily workers were mostly affected by it. Those who owned the land were becoming rich, and they made a class or group of people which divided them from the common people. These landowners never really cared about the condition of the land and how the farmers were struggling. All they wanted was the money should come from the land and did not care about the condition of the farmers. Another problem faced by the farmer was that the money to be given to the landowner or zamindar was not fixed. If the landlord asked more than the set amount, the farmers had to struggle and try to meet the needs of the amount, even if the production was less or not enough. To avoid unemployment, these farmers then start to borrow money from the rich people or mahajans. So this process was very brutal for the common man, especially for farmers, since they now owe to two classes of people, the zamindars and the mahajans. Decline of handicraft industry and trade. As we have studied in the first and second chapters about Renaissance, we are familiar with introduction of machines and industrialization, where companies start to produce more than what a single person can produce in a week or a month. So also was with the case of India and our local products, which was widely troubled with the East India Company introducing their own ideas and machines. The only reason why the British introduced such changes was because they saw the rich resources that were available in India, and due to their selfish wants they wanted to take all the raw materials or finished products and send it to England. Drain of wealth. India under the British rule had already spent off lots of resources, and this was not enough to meet the needs of the company. The types or forms used to extract more from India included salaries payable to the officers of the company. All the money collected through various taxes and revenues were used to pay the salaries of the people working in the company, who were mainly British. Number B. Payment to the British troops or army. All the income that the company got was used to pay the salaries of those army who gave them services to protect the office or headquarters owned by the British. So we see that all the investment was made only for the British and the company. Number C. All the goods that were sent to England were done under the supervision of a British person, and the Indian people had no idea or clue what was being sent and what was received. This also includes not knowing how much the British made profit from Indian goods. However, the kings and the peasants were left in the dark about the profit made by the company. Number E. Even if some Indians were involved in the export and import of the materials, the British made sure that they kept quiet about it by giving them money or gifts brought from England so that the business of the company remained smooth. So from the outside, the British were acting like they were here for business by giving bribes to the king and landlords, whereas from the inside, they were constantly taking away whatever India had. According to John Sullivan, who was the president of the revenue in Madras at that time, bluntly said, open quote, "Our system acts very much like a sponge, drawing up all the good things from the banks of the Ganges and squeezing them down on the banks of the Thames." Close quote. Later on, even Dadabhai Naoroji admitted in his book Poverty and Un-British Rule in India of how the British knowingly exploited the resources of India. Introduction of modern education. On the brighter note or positive side, the East India Company introduced education for the Indians. Number one, under the Charter Act of 1813, it encouraged Indians to study and let them be educated in the field of modern science. Every year, the companies spend 1 lakh for education. To let this happen, the British introduced missionaries to impart education to the Indian students as well as to introduce their religion. Number two, during the tenure of Lord William Bentinck, Lord Macaulay introduced European literature and science, which was openly welcomed by many nationalist leaders like Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and in 1835 they introduced that teaching the students would be done using English as the medium of language in schools and colleges. In that way, Lord Macaulay wanted Indian people in blood but having the taste, the thinking, and the moral conduct of British without much exploitation of the Indian people. It did work out well, but also led to the rise of intellectual Indians who later contributed to the independence of India. Number 3. Wood's Dispatch, 1854. Sir Charles Wood gave his best in order to give out the best of education through policies which was known as Wood's Dispatch. He set up network where every student can climb the educational ladder from primary, secondary, till they get into universities. He also introduced that each district should have a government school where they will be taught with their native or local dialects. This introduction made the Indians thirst for more education, and by 1857 universities were set up in Calcutta, Madras and Bombay in link with London University. Effects of modern education. Through Western education, different places were taught the same thing, and it created a class or group of educated Indians who later on participated for the freedom of India. Since education was given on different fields, it gave the Indians a platform to bring out their own literature and discoveries in science.